This is a live mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right, we're ready.
We're on.
I can do it here.
That was quick. Well, good evening. Welcome to the Growth Planning Committee meeting for, what is today? September 18th. August. I wish it was August. Summer went too fast. We'll start off with introduction of members and guests.
Werner Gilliam.
Abby Sherwin, Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission.
Mike Corsi. James McMahon.
Dan Saunders.
Jim Fitzgerald.
Barbara Barwise.
And Paul Hogan.
And we have two young gentlemen out in the audience from Troop 304 doing their citizenship
Citizenship in the community.
in the
Merit
community.
badge.
So
Where's
welcome.
the camera, guys? You're on the air.
You're on the air. Wait. Thank you.
That makes it official.
You're on TV.
Okay, so on the agenda, approval of minutes for August 21st, 2018.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
No, thank you, Barbara.
All in favor? Thank you very much, Barbara.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Barbara.
All right, comments from guests, any received mail and news from other committee board representatives? Anything?
No new mail at this point, other than what what I forwarded on to you. I think you had some email correspondence from Bill Case.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
So a little bit in terms of, and I'm just looking at number 3, there's
Sure.
update from municipal committees. So 2 committees that I think growth planning probably has interest in. One would be the housing committee, and the other would be the short-term rental committee. So, and Jim, if you want to, feel free to chime in a little bit with the housing committee.
Okay.
As I wasn't at the meeting, the selectmen's meeting, but. So the housing committee has been working on the logistics of what needs to be done to set up a housing trust, and so what we've what the group has come up with through a lot of research and a lot of hard work has been for a recommendation to establish both a C3 and a C4 entity for the trust with a board of directors. For each one of those, certainly, and I don't, fully understand all the complexities to it, but we know that it gives, it'll give the group, some flexibility in terms of how it can operate, how donations can be done to either entity, and so it gives some flexibility in the logistics of it. So. It's my understanding that the report that was done was well received at the selectmen's meeting, and the selectmen voted to go ahead and approve, the creation, of the C3 and the C4, and so the committee's moving forward.
C3 anyway.
C3 anyways. Yep.
Okay.
Is moving forward with the application process.
Okay.
Jim.
The other thing is that we are taking names for anybody that has an interest in serving on the board of directors of the trust. We will be submitting a name for the trust and the initial members of the executive committee. And then that executive committee will select, or there'll be another process to select the other board members, figuring somewhere around 8 to 9 total.
Board members.
And you're right, it was very well received, and I was really surprised it all came together as quickly as it did, but everybody took a piece and went flying and brought it all back, and it all fit together.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of trusts out there, so it was kind of a little bit easier for us to kind of get that information, digest it, and say, this is what would work for us. So that's what we submitted to the selectmen.
Yeah, and it was very well presented.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Werner, is that posted? I looked for it right after the meeting, and I didn't see it, and Jim sent me the report, but I think it should be posted on somebody's part of the website. Because
Yeah.
I've gotten emails about, do you know anything about
Yep.
this?
Okay.
Have you seen the
I
report?
thought it was going to be,
Yeah.
because it was part of the,
Certainly
part
should
of
be
the
part of the
selectmen's
selectmen's package.
It was
It's
not
not
in
in
the
there.
package.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I looked for it there. I think it was just an oversight.
I think that'll probably take about a month to get back in front of the selectmen again.
Excellent. Moving forward on that end.
And so, short-term rental committee, so they've had a number of meetings that have been very well attended by members of the public. So there's been a lot of interest in this topic, and it's what we've started to have a discussion on, and I think what the direction that the committee is going to move forward on is in gathering questions. I think having and doing a questionnaire. It's pretty clear that I think there needs to be some more data gathering before there's any type of recommendation that comes forward as far as any kind of regulatory provisions for short-term rentals. So that's the direction that I'm going to recommend that group move forward on, in developing a questionnaire and looking at some other communities in terms of specific data that gets gathered before making any recommendations to the selectmen.
And what's the date of their next meeting?
The 25th is their next scheduled.
5 o'clock?
Yes.
What, why was the other one canceled?
So we had a number of members who couldn't make it to that meeting, and so I believe we would have had 2 members that were there. So that's why it was canceled. It was canceled relatively late in the day, but again, I believe I was only going to have two members available.
Yeah, how many are on it
So-
again? 7?
I think that sounds correct. Don't quote me on that one, but
I thought I saw
Yeah.
7 when I was there.
yep.
All right. Any other questions for Warner?
No. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so to number 4, survey update.
Okay, so the survey is now live. It went live on September 1st. Dan and I worked together to draft an article for the town newsletter. I think originally we thought there was just going to be a brief little
Yeah.
blurb about the availability of the survey and how folks could take it. But Lori said that she wanted it to be the lead story for the
Yeah.
newsletter. So we put together something a little more substantive, which I think is what Dan passed out to
Oh,
everybody. So it just includes some information about what the survey is, why the committee is undertaking it, how the results are going to be used, and also a little bit of information about the comprehensive plan update process, and then provides information as to how folks can complete the survey, and includes the link to the SurveyMonkey, the online version of the survey. And then we also...
How is, refresh my memory, how is the newsletter distributed?
It's by mail, right?
So the newsletter goes out. I mean, it's mailed out.
Mailed out.
Yeah, so-
To,
to all residential properties in Kennebunkport.
okay, so how do we get it to the non-residents who pay a lot of taxes?
Yeah, so non-residents, there is an electronic version of it.
But how would they know about it if they don't know about it? If they don't get the newsletter?
Yeah. Well, I believe there is a posting that happens on the website about the newsletter. I can't.
It hasn't gone out yet.
Yeah. Well, I believe there was something that went out with the tax bill, wasn't it?
Correct.
I didn't receive it. So
right. Yeah,
if
there
they
is-
received their tax bill, there would have been
there's
a
a
piece of
notice in the
paper in
tax
there
bill.
with information on how to access the survey. So between that, they're likely not watching the local access channel.
Right.
It's
But
on
how
there.
about if you've signed up to receive emails, like I've gotten one for the public meeting on Wednesday, and I've gotten one for the public hearing on the welfare program, but I haven't gotten
On
one.
the survey.
So can we do that? Because a lot of people do, I don't know what the head count is.
Yeah.
No, I can bring that up. I can bring that up to Lori. That'd be up to her to make a decision on that distribution. But I don't see any reason
Yeah, I thought we
why-
had
why
agreed
there
on that,
couldn't be
that's why I
some
was
kind of a link
surprised.
for that.
What about a link on the town's Facebook page or social media?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a prominent space for a week or two on the website?
Yeah. it would
Because
be-
it's often, if it's buried in our little page,
I couldn't
no
even
one-
find it buried, so.
I couldn't
I'm not-
find it
I'm not
at
sure it's
all.
there. on
Right.
I checked our page, I actually did a search survey and
Yep,
didn't get
okay.
any hits.
I guess that's it
Or
right there, I'm
this,
gonna use
so.
that.
Yeah,
I didn't care, I just filled it out and sent it back.
So fortunately, I had my newsletter, so.
No, there you go.
To get my,
Yep.
I mean, does the front page call out the newsletter at all?
no,
Um,
not
I mean,
currently. Nor does it have the link, so we'll get that
I mean,
there.
that would, I mean, especially on the website, I mean, if newsletter doesn't happen every,
It's not
Oh,
coming
yeah,
down till election day, so there'll be plenty of time
Yeah,
still
okay.
to do the survey.
right. But people aren't,
Yeah,
people living in Massachusetts aren't going to go to the website unless
right.
there's a
That-
reason that they've gone there to find it.
Yeah, so we'll see if we can get them an email blast, but,
It's also on the cable access channel.
yeah.
There's notification about it on there, but.
Used to imagine email blast, if it has the link, they can hit it.
Right.
And go, versus having to type it in from the property tax paperwork. But I took the survey, it all went pretty smooth, so,
So I looked today at SurveyMonkey, and so far 116 people have taken the survey, and there's a 100% completion rate. So that
Wow.
just means everybody
good.
who started taking the survey finished
That's
taking
wonderful.
the
That's
survey.
great.
There, when I can print out the results, and it shows you how many people actually answered the question and how many people skipped the question.
Okay.
And so far, the numbers of skipped questions have been very low. But I did just look at a few key questions just to provide some
Yeah.
preliminary results to you all, but it's very soon, so I didn't want to print out the whole thing. But just a few of the questions. One of them, the town should plan for local impacts of sea level rise and a changing climate, which I think relates to a potential new chapter for the comp plan. 40.35% of respondents agreed with that statement, and 37.72% strongly agreed with it. So the overwhelming majority of people felt
surprised.
pretty strongly that that should be something that the town looks into. Another question, the town should work to reduce energy consumption of town-owned facilities. A little over 52% of people agreed with that, and a little over 30% of people strongly agreed with it. So again, overwhelming majority there supporting that. And then the question that relates to whether or not the town should develop a sustainability plan. Again, there was overwhelming majority in support of that, with over 56% of folks agreeing and a little over 29% strongly agreeing.
Way to go.
And then lastly, I just thought it would be interesting to look at the question that asked what folks thought were the main priorities for the town moving forward over the next 5 to 10 years. And the preservation of natural resources and the environment was sort of the overwhelming winner so far, with 53.21% of people ranking that as the top priority. And then for the second priority, it was a little bit split, with traffic winning out slightly, with a little over 23% ranking that as the number 2 issue, and housing for young families following closely behind as the number 2 issue, with a little over 20% of folks rating it as the second priority. So again, very preliminary results, but just thought, provide you with something.
yeah, thank you.
Yep.
So traffic is still important, huh?
There you go. I win.
You win, you win, you're right. Okay. I wouldn't have guessed that. But, so I guess you can go where I put it.
I've already voted.
Traffic's traffic. Okay.
So do folks have any questions about this survey or how to access it? I thought I heard some people were mentioning that they couldn't find the link
Yeah, we couldn't find the link on the, there was no link available on the web.
on the actual
site
town's
page.
website.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it was difficult to, try to find that. I had to go through my notes and find something. So if I'm struggling with finding it, it's likely the other folks will as well.
Okay.
So it just, as Paul mentioned, we certainly had our, the blast, and we'll have a newsletter going out in the future. So there'll be different key times where people will get a reminder of it, but then I think we still need something probably on our website,
Okay.
hopefully
So we're in our
on a prominent,
Yeah, I mean,
prominent
we
spot.
have we have a special topics,
Yeah.
special topics section, so that should be in the special topics section. And then maybe what we do is just run another announcement that,
Yeah.
that says that gives the link, but also identifies it as being in the special topics
Right.
section. So,
That'd be good.
and also
Are you
just
saying it is there?
no, that's what I'm
Okay.
suggesting. That you know, that's
Okay.
going to be my
Don't lose it.
recommendation
Yeah.
for that. And also, just since there's just a question on newsletter, all of the past newsletters are available on the website.
Okay.
You know, if you scrolling through, look for newsletters, and the current one is located there, and it looks like they go all the way back into 2001. Are available on the website.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on the survey? Right now? Very good.
Okay, and then moving on to the next
Yep.
topic, which is sort of a carryover for the previous two meetings that we did not get to. And I think this will just be a very brief discussion topic, but I know we had talked about potential additional chapters to include in the next update of the town's comprehensive plan. And we sent out and briefly discussed it, I think 3 meetings ago, a few examples of what those chapters could be. I think that any work on those would be really dependent on the outcome of the survey and what folks think about that and have to say about those topics. But sent out some examples on a sea level rise chapter, an energy chapter, and a sustainability chapter. But also something that has been on the agenda for a few meetings now that we haven't gotten to is talking just about sort of alternative formats for comprehensive plans. And there are some plans that have come out recently that have really moved away from sort of the narrative text-based version of a traditional plan and focused more on including really well put together infographics to communicate key information. And one example of a plan like that is the plan for Lewiston, Maine, which I sent out to the committee a while ago as well. But just to plant the seed now, I think for future discussion and consideration is, you know, what kind of plan are you interested in developing when you do go about updating the comprehensive plan? And just, I didn't print out a lot, sorry, because they're colored, but I mean, a lot of the data in the Lewiston plan is presented in graph form and pictorial form, and with minimal text supporting it, but it really, I think, effectively communicates the key pieces of information that the town is trying to convey. And then also really focuses less on the inventory aspect of a plan and more so on the goals, policies, and strategies. So what the community is going to do moving forward to sort of act on the information that's contained within the plan.
So it ends up being less dense, shorter, easier to read?
Easier to read, I think a little more digestible for the general public or just somebody who's picking up the plan and trying to skim through it and get an idea about what it is and what it means. And ideally more usable to the folks who are responsible for implementing the plan.
Yeah.
Thanks. I think it'd be beneficial to have it, and, I mean, it's not like you're gonna give this to somebody and, you know, that's an easy go-to.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, and the current plan has a lot of the older information that you want to have. So they can keep that. We don't necessarily have to repeat that in the new, unless it's needed to support whatever. So I'm sure all of you had, I mean, I had the same experience with work where you send out an email, if it's any more than 2 or 3 sentences, people will
Forget
read
it.
it. Right, so if we ask our town to read a 265-page comp plan, it's likely not all of it's gonna get read. It's gonna be a quick skim, and the more graphics and the more
Eye catchers.
focused bullet items, I think the more useful it'll be. So
Well, I
I
think
would suggest we move in that manner.
I don't think you can replace this, but
Yeah.
having that is,
Especially if we get really good
Conveys
where the
information.
electronic versions will take you to other, with links and so forth, they get you to other places that have pertinent data that supports the plan.
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of communities in Maine struggle with what to do with the plan once it's done. you know, because it's so, you know, it's such a process to create it, and then it's even more overwhelming of a process than to take it and implement it. I mean, you know, I think of our own experience, you know, with the spreadsheets, you know, that they're created trying to prioritize, you know, well, what do we do first? And, you know, and I mean, you wind up with this, you know, pretty daunting and overwhelming list of items that you're trying to work through. And that's for communities that have committees that are dedicated to actually doing this. And I think that's not necessarily all that common, that you have a separate committee that remains in place that, you know, has its focus on dealing with comp plans. So I think, you know, the state of Maine in general is going, you know, just practical reality is going to move towards plans that are, you know, a bit leaner and easier to digest and easier to implement.
I mean, it's easy to convey the goals. That's a perfect way to convey the goals.
And I think you can still strike a balance between, you know, meeting the requirements for consistency with the state's Growth Management Act, which I believe Kennebunkport is interested in doing,
Still want to do that.
and presenting the information in a way that's a little more reader-friendly
Yeah.
and based in graphics.
Okay, so that's a good vision for what it should look like, I think, at the end.
Yeah, because even though there has been less of an emphasis on having a plan that's been deemed consistent by the state, I'm still surprised at the number of times you come across applications where there's that question that asks, does the town have a state-approved comprehensive plan?
Good.
And, you know, all I can say is I don't think it hurts. You know,
Yeah.
whenever you're, you know, filling out a grant application and you're able to say yes to that piece of it.
Yeah, they still list that on their website. I was in there a month ago or so, just kind of looking at it to see was it still worth doing.
That's right.
And they were still advertising how here are the benefits of having and grant money was one of them. It gives you a leg up on those towns who don't, so.
And it does make towns actually eligible for certain grants
Yeah.
through the state that it would not otherwise be eligible for if
Right.
it did not have a consistent plan.
Okay.
So, I know it's very sort of early in the process, but just wanted to
Yeah,
plant that
that's good.
seed.
So I think that's the direction I would say the board
Yep.
feels comfortable
Yes.
moving towards, is something much leaner and more focused on how we're moving forward with enough documentation to support where we've been and keep that history, not lose it. But I'd be comfortable in some places where we just refer back to the historical information within the 2012 plan, because that
Sure.
hasn't changed. We don't need to rewrite it all. Okay.
Yeah, because I think, you know, the reality of it is even when we were doing rewrites on a lot of the different chapters, there's a lot of language that actually still came forward from the '96 plan.
Sure.
Because, let's face it, a lot of that historical inventory wasn't gonna change. I mean,
Not
that
changing.
was, you know, you were replicating a lot of that same information.
Right.
Some of it did.
Okay.
Yes, some of it did.
Yeah.
All right, so next steps. So one of our next steps is something we've talked about, it's probably been a couple of months, and I did talk to Lori a bit, is drafting a letter that we would send to the boards and committees that all had action items or strategies or policies they had to implement, just to kind of get an idea of, one, is it something they've done? Did they even know that they were assigned it? Is a possibility. And then two, even get a reflection from them, is it something that's really, you know, worth doing? Is that something based on what their committee have seen that we really ought to be focused on? Or does it need a change? So I'll draft that letter, and Laura said she would support it. I think it should come from us, and I'll copy her on it so that she's aware of it. So they see that, you know, it's something that's kind of coming officially from the town requesting for that. But I think it should come from us as a board. So I'll draft something and provide that for the next meeting to look at or send out earlier so we can discuss it.
And what do you envision,
And what I'm hoping to do, I'll take that spreadsheet that we created and send, here are the action items that were assigned to, you know, the sidewalk.
give them their
committee.
section? Just
Yeah,
give
give
them
them
their,
Yeah.
Yeah, and
12
so
lines or-
where it references in the plan, so
Yeah.
if they want to, they can go look it up, the verbiage on it, but say, you know, these are your 15 action items.
great.
What's the status? are these still worthwhile doing? Is there something we should add?
What are you gonna give for a
Something should change.
timetable? Are you giving a timetable?
You get a day to get back to me.
I give them just 2 hours.
Yeah.
All right, 2 hours.
You just want the answer right in front of them.
Yeah.
They just,
Yeah, do it right now, while it's open.
come on.
Good question.
Couple months.
Yeah, a couple months for sure.
I'm sure they
Right,
have
we're gonna get the
agendas.
survey answers, you know, it's gonna be in December before we even have an opportunity to meet and talk about the survey
And then if it's
results.
going to a committee,
Yeah, it's gonna be.
they're not gonna meet till,
So it'll probably be beginning of next year before we start getting stuff back.
yeah, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, 'cause best we'll do is get something out to them in October,
Yeah, that'd be great.
okay? So I'll take that as an action, to draft that up.
What's our time frame? Like, if you were explaining to them what we were doing and we're at, you know,
So, well, 2022 is the 10-year.
2022.
You know, I haven't really thought about how we should lay out what chapters we should do when.
Don't tell them 4 years.
Yeah.
No,
No, not
They'll
telling,
they'll take the test.
not telling them 4 years. We want to get that
it's
information
just between
earlier.
us.
Yeah.
You know, I think these newer chapters are ones we should spend
Yes.
some time on now, that we can spend some time on now, after we get our survey results and so forth. And
Right.
start work, because you know, based on the initial 116, right, it sounds like all three of those topics are something we ought to have a chapter about. Right, sustainability, sea level rise, conservation. So, those are things that we could certainly work on over the next year.
Sure.
Right? And then there's a fair number of the ones that are fairly, let's say, boilerplate type stuff that you keep in the plan,
Yep.
that we can work on as well, and then maybe work on the harder economic land use, those kind of things, as we get closer to when it's due, to take in what changes have been made within the town, and not have it be, you know, something we worked on next year, and then by the time we go to
22,
publish, it's
yeah.
changed already, so we
Yeah.
gotta change it again, so.
Yeah.
I think I would leave those for the end, the fun ones. Economics, land use, housing. Just put that in this little, Dan's action items. I'll put together a little timeline for that too, for us,
Okay.
just to lay that out, and then we can chat about that.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else on next steps? Abby, did you have something you wanted to?
Just if there are specific next steps that you would like me to work on.
Okay.
To help you all, feel free to let me know. Email, call, anything.
So I'll probably get in touch with you on the new chapters and how we should work those in, how much time frame you think we need to work those when we're meeting, you know, once a month, that kind of stuff, so we can kind of lay out.
Okay.
I think it would be important, you know, if you're considering a different format, for a comp plan rewrite, you know, I would think having a better understanding of what that format is gonna look like, so that you're not developing a chapter that's, you know, really formatted to fit, you know, as a chapter into the current structure. You know, that may be something that you wanna consider. You
Yeah,
know,
that's a good
thinking about
idea.
changing the
Yeah, for
format
sure.
of it first.
And we ought to do that with if we work on the new chapters,
Yep.
so we're starting with all fresh new material.
Or agree on a format first.
Yeah.
That's right.
Look at Lewiston, if there's another model like Lewiston, what do we like, what do we not like? Agree on a format and then,
Yeah.
You don't think Lewiston has like this big text document and then they extrapolate what they want onto something like that? I just assume that this is the meat and potatoes, and then they're also creating something like that. Is that not the case, or?
So this is their comp plan, and I should say, this is not the entire plan.
Yeah.
It's not this tiny,
Okay.
but this
Gonna
is
say,
their comp
That'd be
plan.
awesome, if it was.
Yeah.
So it's the information, it's just presented in a different
Yeah.
format, with less text,
Yeah,
less text
text.
heavy. But this is the comprehensive plan.
There's a lot of potatoes in our comp.
Yeah, but
Start.
so what
And
you're
you-
saying is
Moving
we
towards
keep
trying to get
this and
more
we
of the
just
meat.
Well, this
And move
one,
forward.
this one remains as an historic document.
volume one and we're
No,
kind of
no,
working on volume two.
you adopt a new comprehensive
Yeah.
plan
Right.
Yeah.
come 2022. And this is a historic document.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you have it on your website and you have if we're referring to the historic provisions, the inventory, and we're not going to restate the inventory, then you could, you know, have a whole section in our website that would say, here's, you know, we just put those links separately for the sections. So
right.
that someone doesn't have to refer to the whole, you know,
Yeah.
300-page comprehensive plan. They just get the
Right.
blurb on the trees or whatever it is.
Yeah. Which, yeah, and that's what I assumed, what he said, you know, we're not gonna provide this, but having the links, yeah. It's too much, but thank you.
So would it be helpful for you all in advance of the next meeting if I put together some examples of varying formats for comprehensive plans, and not the whole plan, just an
Yeah.
illustrative example of a few
Yeah.
pages, and put those together and set them out, and then we can discuss them in the
That'd be
next
great.
meeting?
That would be good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think if we got like table of contents and things like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
you know, some of the key pieces.
Okay.
Okay. So anything else on the next steps? Okay. So number 5 is discussion on potential guidelines for updating the growth area map.
Yeah, so I'll include in that also, what the growth planning committee is tasked with the periodic review of growth permits as well, because I think that those, you know, that those two topics, I mean, they're directly
Intertwined.
related to each other, and so the committee already has, you know, has been given the task that's specified in the land use ordinance to do a, you know, a periodic review, no less than every 2 years of growth permits, and, you know, how those have been allocated, and look at the effectiveness of it. How are you still meeting your goals? And so, from what I recollected the last meeting, there was talk, and I get the sense that that you all wanted to establish some type of a policy, you know, not necessarily something that sits in ordinance, but, you know, a separate policy document that says, all right, based on what we've been tasked to do, here's how we would proceed with this, and here are some of the criteria that we would look at for for determining whether or not the growth area map is working, is functioning, how the growth cap is functioning, whether it's still whether it meets our goals, are there changes that need to be made. Things like that. And am I correct in that sense that
Yes.
you all wanted to work on a kind of a policy document for that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So,
And I would just say this, maybe it's the same policy, maybe it's not. We have 2 mandates under the ordinance, one to do the periodic review, and now under the new ordinance section to look at one-offs.
well, to look at updates on the map, you know.
To look at updates on the map,
Correct.
right.
Yeah.
But they're 2 separate duties, so
That's
to
right.
speak.
Yeah, 2 separate duties, but, I mean, they both relate to each other.
Right. So I'm just saying, maybe it's the same policy, maybe it's not. Maybe the considerations are different, maybe they're the same. Obviously, if we're just looking, asking for 2 years' data and seeing, you know, where it stands and whether the map is working, that's kind of one analysis. And the other is, what do we do when someone comes up and says, I can't get I'm in the rural zone and I can't get a permit because I came in August and I'd like to build a house for this reason, and I don't have sewer, and
Right.
should I be considered? How can I be considered?
Yep. So, so that being said, I'm gonna start putting together some questions. I think that's really where we start, is we'll start with some questions. Certainly if you all have any pressing questions that, as we went through this last process of things that that you think should be within that policy, please go ahead and send those to me so I can start putting that together into a draft document for you all to look at. But I'll start to populate, just a document with some questions, that I think, that we heard, that I think are appropriate for it, and then go from there. But just again, certainly if you have any of those, from this, from the last process that you want to have incorporated into that, go ahead and send those to me, and I'll include those.
I mean, the two things are looking at the growth permits, right? So, I mean, one data point we would need, well, I'll back up. My thought was maybe this is something we do on a regular basis, once a year, on a specific time. Maybe it's the first meeting after the town meeting. So in July, we got two things we gotta do. We gotta vote who's gonna be chair and so forth, then we're gonna look at there's very few ordinance things that require us to do something specific. And we could look at that, okay, what has been the results of the growth permits from the previous year, right? What's the last 10 years and how are things being, how effective are they? Right now, it doesn't sound very effective, based on our discussion last month, right? We're still we're using up all the permits in rural, and we're not hardly getting anything in growth and transitional. So the goal of, building where there's infrastructure, which is in our comp plan, is not being achieved. So I think that's going to be certainly a good discussion when we get to growth permits within the comp plan going forward, and whether or not they're necessary. But so that would be one part of that puzzle, right? And then the other part is, has there been any specific changes to the sewer, and the sewer and water, the infrastructure, such that we now have properties, new properties, new lots that are within 1,000 feet. I mean, I don't know if it's more complicated than that. I think Paul had a good idea where if you're not within that 1,000 feet and you do want to get a growth permit, are there things that you could do that would be acceptable, that are going to provide kind of that same,
Like a point system?
yeah, some type of, system, the same kind of, okay, I'm not gonna be on sewer, but I'm gonna do this to my septic system. It's gonna be XYZ designed, it's gonna be pumped out every year, I'll submit blah, 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 in order to assure us that, they're not gonna have an impact to the quality of the land in their area. Then, maybe that is something that we can use.
I thought that was very clever,
Yeah.
put together.
I'm honestly gonna challenge us on whether or not we need them. Growth permits, period. Because I've got some concerns that that's part of our affordable housing problem. But, I don't know. I think it's, hopefully, maybe that goes away. But I think that's something we need to
Well,
need to
it seems,
challenge on.
given what Warner's told us about where the demand is,
It's-
it's where there's cheaper land, and so, no doubt. The question is, would changing the policy bring
Change it, I don't know.
bring affordable housing, or just bring
More development. I don't
more $450,000 houses
know. Yeah, it's a good question.
that nobody can afford to buy,
Right.
except if you're a
Good
vacation.
question.
It's a fair question, but right now, it looks like the rural growth permits are, they're a barrier, right, to people being able to develop things. So
Had
it's-
that proven to us.
So between that and the fact how much acreage you need to build. So, but
Well,
I think
I think-
it's a topic to be challenged.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think we have to, wait and look at the survey results.
Sure, absolutely.
You may be right, you may be wrong, in
Might be
terms
wrong.
of, if you're a minority, 10% of the population,
Yeah.
then we go one way. If you're in the majority, then
Oh,
the town has to be
absolutely.
considered. I guess I'm questioning whether we need to do it every year versus every 2 years. The ordinance says not less than every 2 years.
Yeah, I just thought every year, just because it will allow us to stay up on whatever changes are made. Changes don't happen that quick.
Yeah,
What I want to avoid is having things come in, you know, every third or fifth month, or, you know, I want it to be kind of regulated. That this is when we're gonna review this stuff, every July, or every August, or every October, in a meeting,
But if we,
and,
I agree, I agree, there's a benefit to review it, but that doesn't,
Then update it once.
are we gonna, you know, the people that come in, like, the issues that we have, it's not like from year to year, it's not like we're gonna adjust or shift our fire and do something different, right? Per se,
they may,
I mean,
We could.
they may. I think more likely could be a change to the growth the growth maps
Map.
versus
right,
the
no, and I
permits.
think I think,
The permits
I
is
think you're
more
s-
of a comprehensive plan type,
Right.
land use ordinance review, is it working, not working?
yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you. If the need changes, or if we've done infrastructure changes, it's worthy of discussing that once a year.
Once a year.
I agree with that.
I just don't wanna
but-
discuss it every time something changes,
Right,
right?
Well, and I think along with that is, you know, within your policy should be, how does that get initiated?
right,
You know,
which was
so is
unclear.
it, you know, is it, you know, with the construction, you know, of a sewer extension? You know, is that how it's initiated, that it, you know, once a planning board has gone through a process that, you know, that then becomes a topic of discussion, but falls within whatever your timeline is, you know, but I think that's an important piece that needs to be put into the policy as well. You know,
Agreed.
that says, all right, here's how we start this, here's how we initiate the conversation about any changes. Now, it may just be if you have a set time during the course of the year, it's,
picked up
this is
there.
the set time whenever we do it, you know,
Yeah.
it's not initiated by anyone, you know, by any particular action by anybody else, other than, hey, you know what, it's July, you know, it's the first meeting in July, and that's whenever we review this,
Right.
so.
That's what I'm proposing.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly would be the simplest thing to do.
It's
you know.
it's simple, and we don't have that many changes, and even when we do, it's just, all we're talking about is what pool of permits they can pull from. It doesn't stop whatever they're doing. I sort of like that idea, because then it's something that's in a plan, it can be, I mean, our regulation, our policy, whatever, can be posted, so everybody in the world knows it.
Yeah, expectations are a little bit
Yeah,
clearer.
and it's very clear that we're gonna review this in whatever month we determine is appropriate, and make those adjustments. You know?
Mhm.
And, you know, I'm happy to make it whatever month it is, whatever makes the most sense for developers. If they're gonna be putting stuff in and done in May and June, or whatever it's gonna be, then we can look at it in June, and make it consistent, that's all.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, from a data perspective, you know, I mean, the beginning of the calendar year, I think, is really the best, you know, the best
Okay.
timeframe to do it. You know, because we've just wrapped up with, you know, with one calendar year, we know exactly what we have. You know, at the end of the day, waiting till July, I mean, you're still just gonna be reviewing last year's data,
Yeah.
so.
So it sounds
Yeah, I
like
would
a
think
good
it-
February thing.
Yeah,
then.
February timeframe would,
That works for me.
you know, would make sense.
So, every February, we can take a look at the permits and see if the plan is working. If we need to make any suggestions to tweak the ordinance, right? As for the comprehensive plan, there's not much we can do with that until we get to that section.
Right,
right? And then we can look at whatever changes have been made to sewer and water.
is February, if you were going to propose a change in the ordinance, is February adequate to do that for a June vote?
Well, if you were looking to make amendments to the land use ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bit tight.
Tight.
Yeah, that's tight.
Yep,
It'd probably end up being a November change.
yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
would be a.
Unless it was really inconsequential, it's just
Yeah.
but-
I mean, a map change wouldn't be a vote.
No,
Right.
You know, that would be something that
Right,
you all would
wouldn't
just
be.
decide to do.
Be an ordinance.
But if you know, if your conclusions would result, you know, in an ordinance amendment, then, yeah, I would think if you looked at it in February, it'd be in November. Cause even then, you know, based
Something
on
with
kinda how your
planning
meeting
board and-
schedule is
Yeah.
working, you know, I mean, that's not a small decision to make.
No.
And so, you know, I would expect, you know, a couple of meetings to discuss that.
Usually our first draft is, the changes are due in February,
Yeah.
or June, so. it's-
How many more extensions of the sewer line can the sewage treatment plant handle?
We have, what was it, about 400 units that they could absorb total. I think was the number that Alan
Yeah, that was
used to
a rough,
share. There was a rough
you know,
number of how many more dwelling units could be added overall to the system.
It's,
To be at capacity.
it's not an easy answer, because
You get
it's,
fluctuation in seasons.
right, you have to look at the, you have to look at the license, for the treatment plant, you know, what it's licensed for in terms of gallons. The other piece of it, anytime that there's an extension that's done, it depends on all of the infrastructure coming from your new point all the way back to the plant. And so as part of the study that happens, anytime there's a sewer extension done, there's a comprehensive study of every pump station that goes all the way back to the treatment plant, to make sure that they are, that there's adequate capacity both in line size and also in pump station size. So even though you might have capacity at the plant, depending on where you're looking at in town, you know, you might have some other pinch point for capacity, just in terms of getting back to the plant. So it's a complicated answer. I mean, one depends on, you know, what you have for capacity at the plant, and two, it depends on where at in town you're looking at it, as to whether or not there's capacity or not. So.
Was that designed like that too? Just curious if there's other areas where they emphasize where they're gonna have those less issues as opposed to other areas where if growth continues, they're gonna have more of a problem with that pullback, I guess. I don't know the terminology, I guess.
So like New Bedford Road, when you added that,
Yes.
was that enough just for those, whatever the number of houses is there, or is it sized so that it could handle more beyond the
Yeah, I mean, that's.
10-inch pipe or whatever?
You know, and I'll give you kind of a broad overview of it. I'm not a sewer engineer. But when New Bedford Road, when that extension was done, you know, what they looked at is they looked at the amount of added runtime for the pumps, for the pump stations, and whether or not that fell within, you know, what was considered normal parameters. From what I understand, it is a matter of pipe size, but it's also a matter of how long that pump is going to run. And so obviously the more flow you put into it, the longer the pumps are going to run. And, you know, and the longer the pumps are going to run, then, you know,
They all have to match all the way.
well, then the less the lifespan of it.
Yeah.
So it is a capacity, you know, within the lines. Most of your, and that's just for your pressure systems. I mean, the gravity systems, that's a whole other animal. You know, the New Bedford system is, I would say that it is not dramatically oversized. You know, I mean, let's face it, any engineer that does a design is going to give some margin of error, you know, and there's going to be some room for expansion, you know, within that. But, you know, I can't sit here and say, all right, yep, it got sized for X number of houses and there's X number of extra capacity, you know, that's built within that. Because what we do know is that you don't want to oversize a pressure main, because those systems also need the flow to function properly, you know, so they need the volume in order to work right.
Which you noted was the problem with that hotel when closed, right?
That's correct, yeah. Yeah, we know that we just have ongoing maintenance issues, you know, with the pump station at Turbitt's Creek because it was sized for the Shaman. So there's not an advantage in terms of oversizing pressure mains. Gravity, I mean, that's a whole other animal, you know. If you're gonna go to the expense of, you know, blasting a trench and digging it out, then it makes sense at that point to put a larger size main in, but.
That was very good. Yeah, that was a good explanation.
Thank you. Right, so anyone has anything you want to add to the guidelines for updating the growth area map, or other questions we should add, we can follow that to Warner. As for doing it, I probably should wait. As for doing it for once a year, is that reasonable?
I think it sounds like a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
It
Just
builds-
only, mainly the growth area maps driving that,
Yeah,
because probably not gonna see a lot of change in the growth permits
right.
to reference you to do something. But then at least we're consistent every year.
Yeah, expectations are set
Yeah, expectations are set.
and it's transparent.
I just want to avoid having to do something in March and then have to look at growth area maps again in August, and then once a year. Good. All right. Other business?
None?
None? Okay. Next meeting.
Oh, yeah, good question.
I know I'm traveling the first and third week of October.
What'd you say? Which one?
Yeah, the first and third week I'm traveling, so you guys can welcome to hold it. Jim can, if you're available.
On what, which one?
It's either the second or, I'm not available.
Second, I'm out
anymore.
of town, too.
Second, you're out of
Oh,
town.
so now we're down to
So the 16th?
16.
That looks okay.
Okay.
So I'll get my to-dos, I'll get them to you guys.
Okay.
16th good with you?
Yeah,
Sounds good. That's
Okay.
fine with me.
yeah.
16th good with you, Abby?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
How about you guys?
You guys available? The 16th of October?
You guys have any
They're
questions
bailing.
for us? No? Okay. Thank you for coming. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to a
Aye, hearing no, there is no other business, I make a motion to adjourn.
second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.